Alright, picture this. What if I told you that Mexico is building a shortcut so powerful it could give the Panama Canal a run for its money? Sounds crazy, right? But here's the thing, it's already happening. Welcome to the Tehuantepec Corridor, a $7.5 billion project that could handle up to 5% of the Panama Canal's traffic. That might not sound like much, but trust me, in the world of global shipping, 5% is a big deal. Like enough to make people rethink trade routes kind of big. But why does this matter? Well, imagine you're a shipping company trying to move goods from Asia to the US. You've got two options. Go through the Panama Canal, which is currently dealing with record low water levels and long wait times, or take a shiny new shortcut across Mexico. Which one would you pick? Spoiler alert, Mexico is betting on you picking them. Fun fact, did you know that the Panama Canal handles about 6% of all global trade? That's billions of dollars worth of goods every year. So even capturing a small slice of that pie like the 5% Mexico is aiming for could mean massive economic opportunities. And let's be honest, who doesn't love a good underdog story? But here's the real question. Can Mexico pull this off? Or will it end up as just another ambitious idea that never quite takes off? Stick around, because we're diving deep into how Mexico plans to transform itself into a global logistics powerhouse, and whether it has what it takes to succeed.
All right, let's talk about Mexico's economy. On paper, it's impressive $1.7 trillion, making it the 12th largest economy in the world. But here's the catch, that wealth isn't exactly spread around evenly. In fact, it's so uneven that some parts of Mexico feel like they're living in completely different countries. Take Yucatan, for example. Living standards there are comparable to France. Now jump 430 kilometers south to Chiapas, and suddenly you're looking at a GDP per capita closer to Bangladesh's. Same country, wildly different realities. It's like having a Ferrari engine with a bicycle tire functional, but not exactly optimized. But this inequality isn't just a modern issue. It's been baked into Mexico's history for centuries. Wealth has never really trickled down here. Instead, it's fueled social unrest, revolutions, and even the collapse of entire governments. Fast forward to today, and 1 in 3 Mexicans still lives in poverty. That's right, 1/3 of the population, and yet Mexico is sitting on some serious potential. It's accessible by sea from both Asia and Europe, shares a massive border with the U.S., and has a free trade zone with its northern neighbor. So why hasn't it all come together yet? Well, the government is finally stepping up to try and fix this. They're investing billions into infrastructure, building railroads, highways, ports, and industrial zones to boost competitiveness and transform Mexico into an advanced economy. The goal? To make sure places like Chiapas don't get left behind while Yucatan speeds ahead. Can they pull it off? That's the billion-dollar question, or should I say, the $7.5 billion question, because that's how much they're pouring into the Tehuantepec Corridor alone. Now, before we dive deeper into that, let's pause for a second and ask, why does this inequality matter on a global scale? Because if Mexico can figure out how to balance its regional economies, it could become a blueprint for other countries facing similar challenges. But if it doesn't, well, let's just say the gap between the Ferraris and the bicycles might get even wider.
All right, let's break it down. Picture this. A rail and port shortcut that connects the Pacific Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico in under a day. Sounds simple, right? Well, not so fast. This isn't just any shortcut, it's the Tehuantepec Corridor, a $7.5 billion project spanning 300 kilometers across Mexico's narrowest stretch of land. If you're wondering how long it takes to cross, we're talking about 6 to 7 hours by train. Of course, that's without factoring in loading and unloading containers, which could push the total time closer to 15 hours. Still, 15 hours beats waiting 2 weeks at the Panama Canal, am I right? But here's where things get interesting. This isn't Mexico's first rodeo when it comes to interoceanic shortcuts. Back in 1907, there was already an interoceanic railway connecting the Pacific coast of Oaxaca with the Gulf coast of Veracruz. And guess what? It worked. Global traders used it, commerce thrived, and Mexico had itself a shiny new revenue stream. But then, well, you know how it goes. A revolution erupted, the railway fell into disrepair, and oh yeah, the Panama Canal opened in 1914. Suddenly, Mexico's shortcut wasn't looking so appealing anymore. So why is Mexico giving this another shot now? Well, for starters, the world has changed a lot since 1914. Trade routes have shifted, ships are bigger, and the Panama Canal is struggling with record low water levels. Plus, nearshoring is making Mexico a prime location for manufacturing hubs. The Tehuantepec Corridor could handle about 5% of the Panama Canal's traffic, initially a modest start, sure, but it's a start. And as infrastructure improves and technology advances, that number could grow. Now, here's a fun thought. What if this corridor doesn't just move goods, but actually makes them too? Along the route, there are plans for industrial parks where products can be manufactured, assembled, or processed before continuing their journey. Imagine a smartphone part arriving from Asia, getting assembled in Mexico, and then hopping on a train to the US, all in the same day. That's not just logistics, that's economic transformation. So, while the Tehuantepec Corridor won't replace the Panama Canal, it could absolutely complement Ditan, maybe even steal a bit of its spotlight this time around.
All right, so if the Panama Canal is such a marvel of engineering, and it really is, why are ships stuck waiting in line for days? Like, imagine you're the captain of a massive cargo ship. You've got thousands of containers filled with sneakers, smartphones, and maybe even some avocados. Time is money, right? But instead of cruising through the canal, you're chilling in the queue for up to 2 weeks. Not exactly the express lane you signed up for. Here's the deal. The Panama Canal is dealing with some serious growing pains. First off, water levels in Lake Gatun, the literal lifeline of the canal, are at record lows. And no, this isn't just bad luck. Climate change and overuse are turning this once reliable water source into a bit of a diva. Without enough water, the canal can't operate at full capacity, which means fewer ships can pass through each day. And here's where it gets wild. If you're tired of waiting, you can pay to jump the line for millions of dollars. That's right, millions. Suddenly, that shortcut doesn't feel so cost-effective anymore. So now we've got ships stuck at sea, companies hemorrhaging money, and everyone asking, is there a better way? Enter Mexico's Tehuantepec Corridor. While it won't fully replace the Panama Canal, it's not as fast or as big, offers a viable alternative for certain routes. For example, ships traveling from Shanghai to New York could save time and money by unloading at Salina Cruz, hopping on a train across Mexico, and skipping the Panama bottleneck altogether. Sure, it might take 15 hours instead of 8 to 10, but compared to waiting 2 weeks, that's a no-brainer. Fun fact, did you know the Panama Canal handles about 6% of all global trade? That's billions of dollars worth of goods every year. But when the canal starts charging premium fees and making ships wait, businesses start looking for alternatives. And guess who's ready to step in? Yep, Mexico. The Tehuantepec Corridor might only handle 5% of the canal's traffic initially, but in the world of logistics, even small percentages mean big opportunities. So, while the Panama Canal isn't going anywhere anytime soon, its current struggles are giving Mexico the perfect opening to say, hey, we've got another option. And honestly, sometimes all it takes is one good opportunity to change the game.
All right, let's talk about nearshoring. What is it, you ask? Think of it as moving your office next door instead of across the globe. Instead of manufacturing goods in, say, China or Vietnam, companies are relocating their operations closer to home, in this case, to Mexico. Why? Well, for starters, Mexico has a pretty sweet deal going on. It's right next door to the United States, which happens to be one of the biggest consumer markets in the world. Proximity matters, especially when you're trying to avoid shipping delays, tariffs, and other headaches. But wait, there's more. Mexico isn't just rolling out the red carpet, it's also offering some juicy tax incentives. Companies like Tesla, BYD, Dell, and even Bombardier are jumping on board, setting up factories and assembly plants all over the country. And here's the kicker. In February 2024, Mexico officially surpassed China as the top supplier of goods to the US. Let that sink in for a moment. For decades, China dominated global trade, but now Mexico is stepping into the spotlight. How's that for a plot twist? Now, why does this matter for Mexico? Well, nearshoring isn't just about moving factories, it's about creating jobs. Lots of them. The Mexican government estimates that by 2050, industrial parks along the Tehuantepec Corridor could bring in $50 billion in private investments and create up to 550,000 new jobs. That's not pocket change. These jobs won't just be in low-skilled manufacturing. Either they'll be in advanced sectors like automotive, electronics, pharmaceuticals, and even semiconductors. Imagine workers assembling electric cars, building smartphones, or producing cutting-edge medical devices. This isn't your grandparents' Mexico anymore. And here's where it gets interesting. Nearshoring doesn't just benefit Mexico, it also aligns with US policy goals. New regulations require that a certain percentage of goods, like cars, be made in North America to qualify for tariff-free status. For example, a car needs to be at least 75% made in North America to avoid tariffs in the US. So companies like BYD, China's electric car giant, are setting up shop in Mexico to slap that Made in Mexico label on their products and bypass those pesky tariffs. Smart move, right? But here's the real question. Can nearshoring help solve Mexico's wealth disparity problem? Remember how we talked about places like Oaxaca and Veracruz being some of the poorest regions in the country? Well, guess what? Many of these new industrial parks are being built in those exact areas. If successful, they could transform struggling economies, create jobs, and maybe just maybe start closing the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Of course, nothing is guaranteed. There are challenges ahead, from security concerns to rising costs. But if Mexico can pull this off, it could become a blueprint for other countries looking to capitalize on nearshoring. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll look back at 2024 as the year Mexico became the next big thing in global trade.
All right, let's get real for a second. Building an interoceanic corridor sounds awesome on paper, like the ultimate party where everyone's invited, but here's the catch. Hosting a party is easy until someone spills the drinks. And trust me, Mexico has a lot of potential drink spill moments ahead. So, what are the biggest challenges standing in the way of this ambitious project? Let's break it down. First up, coordination. The Tehuantepec Corridor isn't just a federal project. It involves state governments, local municipalities, and private companies all working together. Sounds straightforward, right? Well, historically, Mexico hasn't exactly been a master at centralizing authority. Think of it like trying to organize a group project where everyone has different ideas about who's in charge, what needs to be done, and when. If the federal government can't keep everyone on the same page, this whole thing could turn into a logistical mess faster than you can say bureaucracy. Next, there's the issue of security. Let's not sugarcoat it, Mexico has a serious problem with organized crime and political instability. Cartels aren't exactly known for playing nice, and if they see an opportunity to exploit the corridor for their own gain, you can bet they'll take it. Imagine spending $7.5 billion on this shiny new infrastructure, only to have cartels or fringe militants holding it hostage. Not ideal, right? And let's not forget the ripple effects if investors think the corridor isn't safe. They'll take their money elsewhere. So security isn't just important, it's paramount. Now, here's another big challenge: environmental and social impact. The corridor passes through ecosystems and indigenous communities that might not be thrilled about having a massive industrial project drop into their backyard. Indigenous groups and environmental organizations could raise objections, and rightfully so. After all, building railroads and ports doesn't just affect wildlife, it can also disrupt local ways of life. Balancing economic growth with sustainability and respect for communities is going to be a tightrope walk. One wrong step, and the backlash could derail the entire project. And then there's the issue of rising costs. Remember how I mentioned earlier that nearshoring is bringing companies like Tesla to Mexico? Well, here's the downside. When big companies announce plans to set up shop, prices go up, like way up. For example, when Tesla announced its factory in Nuevo Leon, local cement and steel prices shot up by 25%, real estate prices skyrocketed, and even the minimum wage increased by up to 20%. If this trend continues across the Tehuantepec Corridor, Mexico could price itself out of its own game. Companies might start thinking twice about relocating, and suddenly that Made in Mexico label doesn't look so appealing anymore. So, can Mexico pull this off? Honestly, it's a tough call. There's a lot that could go wrong, but there's also a lot of potential for things to go right. The key will be addressing these challenges head-on, coordinating effectively, keeping the corridor secure, respecting the environment and local communities, and managing costs carefully. If they can do that, Mexico might just pull off one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects of the 21st century. But here's the million-dollar question, or should I say, the $7.5 billion question. Will this corridor become a symbol of progress and prosperity, or will it end up as another ambitious idea that couldn't quite deliver? Stick around, because we're about to wrap this up with some big-picture thoughts.
All right, let's wrap this up. The Tehuantepec Corridor isn't here to replace the Panama Canal, be clear about that. What it is doing, though, is carving out its own niche in global trade. It's faster than waiting 2 weeks at the canal, cheaper than paying millions to jump the queue, and perfectly positioned to take advantage of nearshoring trends. In short, it's not a replacement, it's a complement. And sometimes, that's all you need to make a big impact. But the story doesn't stop there. Nearshoring is transforming Mexico into more than just a shortcut. It's turning the country into a full-blown logistics and manufacturing hub. Companies like Tesla, BYD, and Dell are already setting up shop, and industrial parks along the corridor are creating jobs in advanced sectors like automotive, electronics, and pharmaceuticals. This isn't just about moving goods anymore, it's about making them too. And if done right, it could help reduce some of the staggering regional inequality we talked about earlier. Imagine places like Oaxaca and Veracruz not exactly economic powerhouses, today becoming thriving centers of industry and innovation. That's the dream. Anyway, now, here's the big picture. Sometimes the best way to solve problems is by creating opportunities, and Mexico is betting big on this one. By leveraging its geography, investing in infrastructure, and capitalizing on global trade shifts, Mexico has a real shot at leveling up on the world stage. Will it be easy? Absolutely not. There are challenges everywhere. You look: coordination issues, security risks, environmental concerns, rising costs, but if history teaches us anything, is that progress rarely comes without a fight. So, what do you think? Can Mexico compete with the Panama Canal? Will the Tehuantepec Corridor transform the country into the next big player and global trader? Will it stumble along the way? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, while you're down there, maybe share this video with someone who loves geopolitics, economics, or just a good underdog story. Because at the end of the day, stories like this remind us that the world is always changing, and sometimes the most unexpected places can become the next big thing.